welcome to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome, everybody.
The image behind us is actually part of a presentation this morning. We're going to talk about how Tesla is rolling out full self-driving in China.
Yeah.
So I asked Dal-E, give me a Tesla Model S in a Chinese setting, obviously in countryside and, with some Chinese elements. And I'll move out of the way here. There we go. We've got some Chinese below the Tesla logo. And, usually AI complains about a specific brand reference, like a Tesla Model S, except for the Tesla Roadster. Somehow it will allow
Well, you've done it so many times that hopefully it's learned.
We've trained it, I suppose, yeah. But anyway, that is a pretty good-looking rendition of a Tesla Model S. I don't see any flaws in that. Do you, Mark?
Offhand, I do not see any flaws in the Model S. I also am very impressed with the landscape behind the scenes. It is definitely, the mountains and stuff are very much a Chinese type of mountainscape.
Exactly, yes. There's a pagoda-style building, and there are some of those red lanterns above your head, Mark. So we'll get into that later on in the conversation here in this podcast. But yeah, the apparently full self-driving will be available in China. They don't quite call it that, and we'll get into that. But the first article I wanted to share with you is, and this is the headline, New Study Makes Surprising Discovery About Tesla Longevity. Here's what you need to know. And this data was collected from vehicle inspections in the United Kingdom. They say if the price tag on that new Tesla is giving you second thoughts, you might want to take a look at some new longevity data that was published by Nature Energy. The data was collected from vehicle inspections in the UK, and it found that the electric vehicle brand Tesla consistently ranked first for lifespan and mileage. While the average electric car is expected to cover approximately 124,000 miles in its lifetime, Teslas are consistently covering an average of 204,000 miles per this new report. If you tend to evaluate the purchase based on usable years rather than mileage, then Tesla is ahead there too. They say its average EV lifespan is 20.3 years, whereas the average life of an electric vehicle has a lifespan of 18.4 years. By comparison with an ICE-powered vehicle, it's 18.7 years.
I have a quick question on that one. How long ago was it when Tesla put out its first Roadster?
2008, actually, so 17 years ago.
So how can it have an average lifespan of 20 years?
I thought the same thing, and I'm not quite sure where they came up with that. Unless they're counting the taxi cabs in 1907 in the last century.
Well, you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
Could be.
I wonder if it's also, my speculation purely, are they counting the number of cars that are on the road versus number of cars that have been pulled off the road and just simply extrapolating mileage?
Yeah.
Or age.
And, of course, this is confined to the UK, and the UK did have Tesla Roadsters. In fact, that was the home of the Tesla Roadster when you consider that Hethel, UK was the home base for Lotus, and that's where the first Roadsters were built.
That's right.
Looks like we've got some questions and comments coming in. PYGKLB has joined us from YouTube. He says, good morning from overcast Western Oregon. And it's cold here, too. We were getting nice into the 70s and 80s,
we were.
Up to pushing toward 90. And I don't know what it is today, but I'm wearing my beanie today because I'm cold.
It's, I would love, though, PYG, send some of that moisture down this way. We've had 1/100th of 1 inch of precipitation since August 12th.
Yeah. Yesterday morning, it was kind of a little cloudy, but, sun predominantly.
Yeah.
And one of the shop guys says, it's going to rain today by noon. So we scrambled to take some things and put them inside. Because here in Arizona, there's no threat of rain, so you can do a lot of storage outside. So I spent part of the morning helping getting stuff inside. By noon, I think we got maybe 3 or 4 droplets, and that was it.
Yeah.
So I told my wife, though, and she said, well, I was up there in that neighborhood. She was about 5 to 10 miles west of us, and she said that it was pouring there. So it must have been isolated showers yesterday.
Well, it's at least somebody got some.
Yeah.
Niels has joined us as well. On YouTube, he says, I missed the episode where the glasses came off, so I am still in the dark.
Niels, it's still top secret, but the video is coming out, and we will reveal the reason for the sunglasses for so many years.
Yes.
So hang in there. Thank you for your patience. All right, so getting back to this article about the Teslas actually lasting longer than the other electric cars and longer than the ICE vehicles. They say that, for example, Tesla batteries are now expected to outlast their vehicles. And the reason they make that claim is that this is prompted by researchers that are examining that these batteries could be repurposed or extended beyond their usable life, and specifically used for grid storage and extended clean energy and into other transportation sectors and beyond.
Well, I took some time to go down the rabbit hole a little bit of the lithium-ion batteries that run the Tesla vehicles and what they're capable of in theory. The older lithium-ion polymer batteries, which is the LiPo batteries, and as well as the more current LFP batteries, like the 4680s that Tesla's using in the Model 3 and the Model Y. The older style batteries, which were prominent in the Roadster and the Model S, will take about 2,000 cycles, is considered their normal lifetime. And the LFP can last up to 5,000 cycles. So first we need to answer, what's a cycle? Now, a cycle is simply taking a battery from 100%, discharging it all the way to 0, and bringing it back to 100%. That's one cycle. If you have a partial discharge, which is what we typically do with our EVs, right. Say you go from 90% down to 40%, that's a 50% discharge, and then back up to 90%. Okay, that's half of a cycle. So you do that twice, you have one cycle. So what that means is that range, it becomes a pretty easy math. Multiply your car's estimated range times the number of cycles that the battery could have, and you get, at least in theory, what your battery should be capable of. So I have a Model S. It's a 100, has the 100 kilowatt battery in it. It has the lithium polymer batteries. It's got a typical range of about 300 miles when it's charged to 100%. And with 2,000 cycles, that means that battery should be good for somewhere around 600,000 miles.
Interesting.
For the LFP batteries, the Model Y long range is kind of our poster child here. They've EPA estimates are about 310 miles on a full charge for an LFP. And if you take the LFP, since it's got 5,000 cycles, I thought, well, okay, there's some degradation in there. 20% degradation is considered end of life. So we'll average that out. Instead of 310, 310, 20% less is 250. Average it out, it's 280 miles. Times 5,000 cycles is 1.4 million miles in theory that you could get on these batteries.
Amazing.
So if your car is wearing out at 200,000 miles, the battery itself might only be a third or less through its lifespan. No wonder we have people pulling these car batteries out and sticking them in storage containers, in sea containers, and using them for grid storage.
Yeah.
It's a great application for it.
And the solar people as well, they're repurposing these batteries. We have a number of them that show up here buying our batteries.
Yeah, and a cool thing about the solar application with the lithium-ion batteries, lithium-ion is a deep cycle battery. It's ideal for things like solar applications.
So they give a further example here, getting back to battery life and costs. While the average diesel driver, they say, spends roughly $9,500 a year on fuel, over 5 years, a comparable EV driver spends closer to $4,000, so half of that. And of course, they talk about charging stations that are being built. They're more efficient as they continue to build them, faster charges, and it will become more affordable to charge these types of cars. Luke Bauman's joining us from YouTube. He says, good morning from Washington.
Good morning, Luke.
Welcome. So we talked last week about the GSA and the federal government pulling the EV chargers at the federal facilities in the United States. And one of the unanswered questions was, and I promised that we would update, was, are the employees at the federal at these federal locations being charged for the electricity?
Yes.
It turns out that the employees are not, but the anyone else is, including the public, which apparently also had access to this. And the funds from that go directly into the U.S. Treasury. So again, I'm a bit confused. If we have the infrastructure already installed, we've got the charging stations, they're generating revenue, why pull them?
That's a fair question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
At the same time, I took some time to look as well. We were talking about how many of these chargers were running the older Chatamo, that Japanese style plug that's
Right.
about that big around, and there is a minority of chargers that have that. Most of the chargers have been converted to either the J1772 or the CCS1, which is the high voltage.
Okay. And there's a further study that also creates or confounds me. Is in 2017, there's a study done by the U.S. Department of Energy, the Vehicle Technologies Office, and they concluded that employees who have access to workplace charging are 6 times more likely to own an EV than those who lack such access. So we're actually promoting the conversion to EVs by having charging capability at workplaces.
Yes.
So I'm thoroughly confused as to what logic possibly could prevail in our federal government pulling these chargers, especially with the proponent of EVs, the number one guy on the planet, Elon Musk, advising our president. So they talk about how many are going to be pulled here in this article. About 8,000 charging ports that are managed by the GSA. This directive also includes, by the way, offloading recently acquired EVs from the federal fleet. In other words, our tax money has been spent to buy electric vehicles, and now we're going to scrub that and offload those. Now, if the chargers are going away, that seems to me to be independent of an EV fleet. Why are we getting rid of the EV fleet?
I honestly think it's all political.
Okay.
Because there's no good logical reason. We've talked about the GSA has some 8,000 charging ports available at some smaller number of charging stations. In the big scheme of things, that's not a lot. In October, for example, October 2024, the U.S. passed the 200,000 charging port threshold, over 71,000 roughly charging stations. And that means EV charging is getting close to being as ubiquitous as gasoline chargers. Or gasoline pumps. Although the number of charging stations, one station may have 10 or 15 different chargers. The number of charging stations is still only somewhere between a third and one half of what's available for the ICE world. 8,000, it's not a huge number. Yeah, it's in the bigger scheme of things.
It just begs the question, though, what's the strategy? I mean, I love it when changes are announced and there's a good, sound reason, whether I agree with it or not, but there's a strategy.
At least there's a reason.
Yeah.
And it seems like the reason is Joe Biden did this, so we want to not.
Yeah, which is, And
that doesn't seem to be much of a reason.
Right. So they say that the GSA is responsible for managing federal assets, including a fleet of approximately 650,000 vehicles in the federal government in the United States. Under the Biden administration, it embarked on a plan to transition to zero-emission vehicles. And this included the procurement of over 58,000 EVs and the installation of 25,000 charging ports. We're only at 8,000 so far. Well, it never came close to that, to achieving those figures. So the GSA is preparing now to offload EVs and in its current fleet, but it's unclear where they're going to go. Are they going to sell them at public auctions, for example? Well, that would be one way to, keep these vehicles in play. They say technically it could simply take the vehicles out of the fleet and put them in storage rather than sell them. Well, that, of course, would be a complete travesty. Our tax money's been used to buy these things, and now we're going to store them. And what happens when you store an EV?
Eventually, that battery
Yeah,
goes bad if it doesn't
right.
get charged, at least sometimes.
Unless, and I got to put a plug in here, you have a service like EV Preserve, which we have in Phoenix, Arizona, which is especially designed to store electric vehicles. It is, to our knowledge, the first EV storage facility on the planet, and it was designed to store collectible EVs, which there aren't many of because they haven't been around that long. But the Tesla Roadster is really the first electric vehicle that fits that collectible category.
Right.
So if you have an EV Preserve like we have here in Phoenix, then these vehicles would be stored properly and potentially put up for sale later on at some point.
So it sounds like we need to call the GSA and let them know that we've got some space.
Exactly, yes. And who knows how many tens of thousands of vehicles will be phased out at this point. Then the burning question is, if they're getting rid of these EVs, Mark, what are they going to replace them with?
Great question.
ICE vehicles would be my assumption, because
in
the
all
need for
likelihood,
that,
yes.
Yeah. So I'm as we get more information, we will report. But at this point, it looks like a complete mystery or a complete faux pas.
Yeah.
All right. Got some comments up there.
Easy EV on YouTube tells us, I just paid up the last $2,000 for FSD for my 2018 Model X. They're upgrading the computer and the cameras from version 2.5 to version 3. Looking forward to joining the future even more. Mm-hmm. I'd love to find out what that upgrade entails to version 3.
And of course, we're all looking forward to finally having full self-driving vehicles that are on the roads and making the roads much safer.
Definitely.
YouTube, Color J says, good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
So here's an article that was interesting that made the news last week. Lucid CEO steps down as company details some executive changes. And this happened Tuesday last week. It was in a press release that Peter Rawlinson will be transitioning from the role of CEO to strategic technical advisor to the chairman of the board. And meanwhile, Lucid has moved the COO, Mark Winteroff, as the interim CEO. And they've already begun a search to find a Rawlinson successor. Now, I have a lot of questions about this. The first one is, was this voluntary or was this forced?
That's the first really good question. And that's kind of the $64,000 question here. If he was forced into some advisory role, instead of that, it means that somebody's getting a little more serious about wanting Lucid to sell cars.
Yes, and it could also be an indication of what we had assumed was infinite patience by the PIF fund, which may be waning.
Yeah.
So, but the statement by Peter was very appropriate, and it goes like this. Now that we have successfully launched the Lucid Gravity, I have decided it's finally right time for me to step aside from my roles at Lucid. I am incredibly proud of the accomplishments the Lucid team has achieved together through my tenure of these past 12 years. We grew from a tiny company into a big ambition, with a big ambition to a widely recognized technological world leader in the sustainability or in sustainable mobility. Now, Peter previously worked for Tesla, and he was vice president and chief engineer on the Model S project. In fact, we were reporting on the death of 3 engineers in 2010.
Yeah.
And they were actually, they were involved in a plane crash, and the reason that they were going somewhere other than Hawthorne, or to Hawthorne actually, was that they were meeting up with Peter Rawlinson's team that morning. Now, the new CEO, or the interim CEO, held the position of CEO since being hired December of 2023. Prior to that, he was in a number of different jobs here. I won't go into those and bore you. So there are some changes occurring at Tesla. Now, in the meantime...
You mean at Lucid?
Yes, Lucid. In the meantime, before this was even announced, there was an analyst that cut Lucid's price target from $3 a share before earnings to $1.13 ahead of the Q4 earnings results. And of course, once the earnings came out and the announcement was made, the stock has begun to suffer quite a bit. I don't know where it's at this morning, but...
it's not good.
As of a few minutes ago, it was $2.04.
Okay.
So it continues to just tumble. The wider market has continued to influence the stock price in addition to what's going on with Lucid. I mean, investors want stability. This came out of the blue.
Yeah.
Nobody expected it, although you and I speculated that afternoon. We're like, yeah, you probably need to get rid of the engineer if you're going to double your sales within a year.
Yeah, good point.
That was kind of what we were talking about.
There are a number of people that are speculating that this may be a good move in that this position requires a more charismatic approach.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the technical approach is fine running the engineering teams, but in this case, we need another Elon Musk, someone with a lot of personality.
Yes.
Love him or hate him, right?
Yeah, exactly. Love him or hate him. You need somebody who is Elon Musk or Tim Cook focused.
Yeah.
While Tim Cook wasn't the huge personality that Steve Jobs was, Steve Jobs left a lot of loose ends. He always let other people clean up his messes, and Tim Cook was the guy to clean up messes.
Right.
And so he was very sales oriented, where Steve Jobs was very engineering oriented.
So visionary versus execution.
Yeah.
So while Peter Rawlinson, though recently stepped down as Lucid's CEO, he won't be leaving empty-handed. He will still take home a very generous salary in his new role as an advisor to the chairman of the board. In fact, they say he'll be earning $120,000, not per year, folks, per month. All right? Receiving also a $2 million stock grant, as well as medical benefits and a company car.
All of that to take on the title of CEO strategic technical advisor to the chairman of the board.
Mm-hmm.
That's their way of saying, just go away, we'll call you, don't call us, and if we have a technology question, we'll ask you.
Hey, Pete, I have a question for you.
Yes.
And for Mark as well. So the combined, just out of the blue announcement mixed with him staying on with that kind of a salary, it seems like, if we're to speculate for a minute, that maybe he was just cut to replace him, but then they're going to keep him around and they're going to pay him really well and give him all the stock options. Does the Saudi PIF fund own enough of Lucid at this point where they don't necessarily care how the market will be affected with a move like this? Because you would think that if they're the ones in charge of 60+% of the stock, they wouldn't want an impact like this.
Those are all excellent questions, Jesse. Yeah, we can speculate. One of the things that I find puzzling is that usually these kinds of changes are made with a solution in place. The fact that there is no replacement at this point leaves me wondering what happened. How did this, why is it staged this way? It would have been far less impactful, I think, if an announcement was made that who the replacement was.
Yeah, I think so. And in lieu of that announcement of who the replacement is, they're keeping Peter on in some sort of consulting role to help make sure there's a smooth transition to the next CEO.
Good point. And the things that we don't know that aren't going to be open agenda was it health related?
Yeah, we'll never know.
I think the only public figure that where the whole world knows his health is the Pope at this point in time. But usually in private industry, these things aren't made public.
Yeah.
So anyway, a lot of speculation available, but do I think Lucid will survive? Absolutely. Do I think they have a good product? Yes, totally. And we'll just have to weather this storm and deal with the stock devaluation for a while.
And to answer your question, Jesse, kind of directly, in my opinion, I think the PIF doesn't care what happens with the stock price because I think they're in there for the long term.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
point.
that makes sense.
All right, a lot of comments here. Niels is saying, how about calling the orange phenomenon an offer to maintain all those EVs or help auction them off? If I could get a hold of Donald, I would do that. If I could get a hold of Elon these days, and I used to be able to, I can't anymore. He's shielded himself from everyone, it seems. But there are some definite questions and some suggestions that would make the outcome much better.
Although the idea of dropping an email, even if it's just to Elon and it gets filtered by his assistants, saying, "Hey, we can help take care of those GSA cars.
We can store those cars for you and
can
keep them running." Yeah.
We can help. We can help you. Low Riderman asks us on TikTok, no sunglasses?
We're getting more play with the sunglasses after we took them off than when we had them on, if you remember. It might be one per session, one per podcast.
Yeah.
We are getting ready with the video to announce why there were years of sunglasses involved in all of the Gruber productions, from podcasts to short videos to even long videos. And so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that video, and I understand some of the reasoning behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Niels also tells us on YouTube, I saw a test of the Highway ADS 2.1 system, which the tester thought worked much better than Tesla full self-driving in China. And it's included by default at no cost. Autopilots will be commodity.
Yeah, good point. It will be, they will be ubiquitous.
Yeah, maybe you should go into that article so we can talk a little more about
Sure.
about that.
All right. So actually, that is the next one. Big headline: Tesla uses clever workaround to train full self-driving for China's roads. They say an initial version of what is effectively Tesla's FSD has started going live in China this last week. And some early users are commenting how well it's performing in the country, despite only being available in North America previously. In response to some of these reports, Elon revealed how the system has so quickly adapted to China's road signs and traffic laws, noting the company's emphasis on video-based training makes the FSD-based system able to learn so quickly. If you remember, in the United States, the process was similar to how they switched in 2023, actually. Ahead of the launch of FSD Beta version 12, the engineers pointed out that the then forthcoming version would play a key role in solving autonomy, especially due to its move toward a neural network that would be trained on video instead of rules-based approach in human written code. And there were millions of lines of code back then, C++, I believe, which they found just wasn't as effective as neural network or actually running videos by FSD to train it. And that's what they did in China. So the rest of this article says there is they commented on X, actually Elon did, how this FSD system had begun learning about driving in China ahead of time and with virtually no additional software development costs. They said, we use publicly available video on the internet of roads and signs in China and use that to train the simulation.
That's remarkable, if only because it really helps to justify the switch to neural networking for Tesla's full self-driving. The fact that it can get from 0 to a really high level without any changes in the base software algorithms and software code, as that's, to me, that just says it's a well-designed system.
Yeah. Now in China, they are not calling it full self-driving or FSD just yet because of some data privacy laws in China. Data privacy, TikTok comes to mind there. Kind of an irony there, I believe. All right, got a bunch of comments there.
On YouTube, Spoonie412 has a kind of an unusual comment, I think. I'll just read it as is. It says, the next big company, Nano Motors, driven by frequency resonates internal energy, neurologically developing Chad.
Wow.
I guess prison riots are breaking out because EV declined in advancements.
A lot to unpack there.
Yeah. PYGKLB on YouTube also says, I used FSD extensively on a Montana trip to Tucson last month. Only real problem was the sun and camera disengagement.
Oh, interesting.
That's
okay.
pretty cool.
So lighting issues are still a problem, it sounds like. Niels is saying, do the Lucid Arabs have a convertible loan in Lucid? Convertible to more and more shares as the price drops.
I know that they have a $750 million convertible loan. I don't know if it's convertible to a larger and larger number of shares as the price drops, but I would guess that it does.
Interesting.
So that's one of the main financing vehicles that Lucid got in the summer of last year was a $750 million infusion, and it came in as debt that could be converted into stock.
The potential for something nefarious going on then looks like exists.
Potentially, especially if we find out that the Saudis converted their loan to shares. And you know that Lucid is in the process of getting ready another series of shares. So they are looking to further capitalize, which of course the investors didn't like because it further dilutes the investor ownership.
Mm-hmm. Well, for those of you that are used to taking advantage of buying a dip, this may be the time. Although I've been watching it and I thought a dip was $2.70 and then $2.50, and now it's just over $2. Yeah. There's a strong support level at the even numbers. So if it breaks below $2, this thing could go even lower. And maybe that first analyst that claimed it's a $1.13 stock has some merit. However, BlackRock, on the other hand, another investment type firm, has been accumulating shares left and right.
Yeah, they have. And there are a number of places that have projected anywhere from $3 to $5 for Lucid. It's just the guy that projected $1.13 is the one who made all the headlines.
Right. TikTok, Will Kurt says, sorry, off topic. If there's any interest, I will direct message you. He says, are you willing to franchise? Franchising has been tantalizing but difficult because the finding skilled labor to do the type of work we do and the specializing we do in Tesla Roadsters. Tesla Roadsters are fundamentally shipped to us from all over the United States and sometimes outside the U.S. And people understand that shipping is part of that experience. Low-tech auto, they'll have taken care of it. Their local service providers, usually Tesla service centers. But the more sophisticated repairs eventually come to us. We are, however, moving into the sexy world, at least with Tesla, into the other platforms. And as that grows, yes, franchising and scaling will definitely be something that we will start looking at.
Yeah.
We're also beginning to make news and headlines in the other exotic car world that are moving into EVs. The LaFerrari, for example, is a hybrid. Most Ferrari service centers are highly skilled in those 12-cylinder, exquisitely type engineered drivetrains. But when it comes to batteries and inverters, they're kind of drawing a blank. So I foresee companies like us that will be outsourced for that type of repair. And there's the McLaren P1. Then the eventual EVs that will be created by Lamborghini, Ferrari, McLaren, by Porsche, by all of them, actually, as we move into a world where ICE manufacturing is no longer allowed. And that's coming, 2035 in some cases. So, yes, the long answer is we will be franchising and scaling, just not this month or today.
Yeah, if you want more information or to keep in contact with us on the franchising in the future, ev@gruber.com is the email. And I would suggest you just go ahead and email us at that address.
Yep. Another headline, Massachusetts Tesla charging stations, and I've got an image for you here. We can actually bring that up. You guys can... All right, guys, what's going on here with my...
It needs to be maximized. It's off the screen.
Yeah. All right. As we can get part of it, I suppose. And...
click on the title bar and just drag it up a little bit.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. And
okay, now we can go
maximized.
full screen. Okay.
And then you're full screen.
We are. There we are. This was in Massachusetts. Apparently, let me find the actual article here. And it was on CBS News and at a Boston affiliate. But the police in Massachusetts say that 7 Tesla charging stations were intentionally set on fire, and it's being investigated at this point, of course. It was in Littleton. And the fire happened 1 a.m. In a shopping center on Constitution Avenue in Littleton. Suspicious origin. And the sad part about this is that these are not isolated cases. This is just one of many reports, even outside the country. France apparently had some of this type of damage. There's vandalism being reported at Tesla service centers. Mm-hmm. And the cause-effect relationship appears to be the CEO's more visible involvement in U.S. government at this point.
Yeah, I've heard of stuff happening in Denver, Colorado as well, and it's definitely tied to politics, unfortunately.
We were talking about Tesla stock as well here, and this is a chart that I pulled for you. And this looks like a one-year chart. And you can see there was a peak here of $483 per share. We thought it was going to hit 500 at that point. Mm-hmm. But there has been a long, steady decline here. As you can see, as of this morning, when I pulled this, the stock was down to $266 per share. But there are analysts that are saying that the target of this, Morgan Stanley, for example, they see Tesla rising to $430 per share again. It has plummeted, as of this article, 28% in February alone. And let's see what else, if we have any other predictions here. Yeah.
Elon himself tweeted, too, I saw on Twitter, that he said that he believes Tesla will do 1,000% profit in the next 5 years. So he's trying to do some projections on it as well. Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a number of things that are in the wings. We've got the robo-taxi, for example, launch. And, of course, Tesla is not just a car company.
Right.
It is much more than that, including robotics and Neuralink and, the list goes on and on. So,
well, let's not forget their stationary storage. They have their third mega factory being built in China for the large stationary power battery packs that are utility grade.
And from an EV manufacturer standpoint, they are the most prolific in terms of adding manufacturing space. There's one in Shanghai now that's operational. Yep. There are talks taking place in India with the Prime Minister regarding setting plant up there. And short term, it looks like it's a bargain at this point.
It honestly does. I own just a very little bit of Tesla. That's not advice.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, it looks like we're coming to the end. We've got a couple more comments here. And Niels is talking about Lucid again. He says, well, if that's so, and we were talking about the
convertible.
Convertible, yeah. That's a classical death spiral. TikTok, Will Curd. Gotcha. I'm in California with training. I can acquire technicians. I'll follow up with you at a later point. Thanks and appreciate the info. And then Stefan Ionita says he still brings cars from China in some countries.
Yes, he does. In fact, I think the Shanghai factory supplies a lot of the Canadian Teslas because they don't have the same type of tariffs and stuff that we have here in the United States. And by so doing that, it frees up the U.S. factory to supply cars to the United States.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week for another edition of the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner.